They say the sea is cold, but the sea contains the hottest blood of all, and the wildest, the most urgent. And the whales in the wider deeps, hot are they, as they urge on, and dive beneath the icebergs, the right whales, the sperm whales, the blue whales, the killers. There they blow, hot, wild, white breath of the sea. And they rock through the sensual, ageless ages in the depths of the seven seas. And through the salt they reel with drunk delight. And in the tropics they tremble with love and roll with massive, strong desire, like gods. Off Sri Lanka, the great sperm whales click their haunting sounds into the clear, deep ocean. Man does not know why they talk, nor does he fully comprehend how. In fact, we know virtually nothing about the habits of this legendary leviathan. Fact or fiction, the history of this creature is shrouded in mystery. We don't even know how many of these cetaceans are left in the world. We do know that our lives are enriched by the realization that these sociable mammals are now swimming in the sea as they have done for millennia. In the past, the sperm whale was hunted mercilessly by the Yankee whalers. They would set sail in square-rigged ships and search the seven seas for the cachalot, the prize that provided the precious, clear oil so valued for smokeless candles and the lubrication of delicate machinery. From the icy North Pacific to the steamy tropics, the sperm whale was indiscriminately killed for more than 2.5 centuries. Like the possessed Captain Ahab in Moby Dick, the whalers never really knew where the whales might be found at any particular time. Their voyages sometimes took as long as 5 years. Upon sighting the whale and closing with him, the harpooner darted his iron, and if his aim was true, the injured whale towed the whaleboat on the infamous Nantucket sleigh ride. Exhausted and too weak to drag the longboat anymore, the helpless whale surrendered to the thrust of a lance. As the carcass was brought alongside the ship, the blubber was peeled off like the skin of an orange. It was chopped up and put in the try-pots, there to be boiled down. The rich spermaceti oil was ladled from the case by hand, and the rest of the carcass was left for the sharks. Often the fires were stoked for days, illuminating the nights with an eerie glow, and sometimes burning the ships to the waterline. In the primordial serenity of the Indian Ocean, the whales swim in peace. This land, this island of Sri Lanka, is as diverse as it is beautiful. Because they are inhabitants of an island, the people have a special reverence for the sea, and they have a 2,500-year-old commitment to the land and the conservation of wildlife. Trincomalee, a quiet port in the northeast corner of the island, is the site of a 3-year World Wildlife Fund research project under the direction of Dr. Hal Whitehead of Memorial University in Newfoundland. Dr. Whitehead, his fellow scientists, and his crew are among the first people to observe and report on the social behavior and population dynamics of sperm whales. To add support, an American film team has been invited to Sri Lanka to see and hear the great whales, alive and free. In the established sanctuary of the Indian Ocean, the scientific studies continue with the cooperation of the National Aquatic Resources Agency of Sri Lanka. Their objective is to learn about the sperm whales and to increase awareness of the need for marine mammal conservation. The whales are no longer hunted for their oil, but they are studied for science under the continuing support of the government of Sri Lanka, which has established the Indian Ocean Marine Mammal Study Center at Trincomalee. Since we know so little about sperm whales, especially where to find them or how to study them, this kind of research has rarely been attempted. The filmmakers plan to rendezvous with the research vessel Tulip, far out at sea. Three miles offshore on the first day, the crew sights the blows of whales. They are not the forward angled spouts of sperm whales, but the high vertical plumes of blue whales. Serendipity.
Okay, take off.
The blue whale is the largest animal that has ever lived on Earth, asking nothing more than to be left in peace. A mature blue whale can be over 100 feet long and weigh more than 150 tons, 300,000 pounds. Its great size provides no refuge from the threat of extinction. In one season, earlier in this century, over 29,000 blue whales were killed in the Antarctic, providing 250 million tons of meat, meal, and oil. Ever seen underwater. The blue whale has been legally protected since 1964. Still, this rare and majestic animal is considered an endangered species. The blue whales are accompanied by a flotilla of remoras, little hitchhiking suckerfish that attach themselves to the whales by a specialized disc on their heads. They probably tag along to feed on the scraps left over from the whale's enormous meals. Washed astern in the wake of the whale, the remoras hang on against the force of the water, churned by the horizontal flukes that may be 20 feet across. A blue whale at birth is larger than most other full-grown animals. It may weigh as much as an adult elephant. After an 11-month gestation period, the mother gives birth to a 3-ton, 25-foot-long calf. For the first 6 months of its life, the nursing baby gains 200 pounds a day or 8.5 pounds an hour. If you could stay underwater long enough, you could actually see it grow. We don't know if the whales are talking to one another or if they're just humming to amuse themselves. But now that we have added the sounds of propellers to the ocean's symphony, we may have effectively blocked the whales from ever communicating over long distances again.
I rolled right on top of it and it went down the whole body really, really close. And there must have been 20 or 30 remoras. And the tail was as close to me as Martha is. The tail was right there, and I was just holding the camera right there and swimming as fast as I could. I just couldn't catch up. They really moved. That's good. I think we should do that some more. That was a lot of fun.
They are feeding here on the tiny shrimp-like crustaceans known as krill. Each whale consuming an estimated 40 million of these tiny creatures every day for 4 months. Blue whales are filter feeders, straining out the krill with the baleen plates that hang from the roof of their mouths. The whales' reddish defecations prove that they are feeding here. These whales, therefore, are not the same ones that travel every year to feed in the Antarctic. This population may spend their entire lives in the Indian Ocean, further north than anyone expected to find them. Spouting forth a sea 30 feet into the air, the blue whales roll ponderously through the water and then throw their mighty tails into the air before a longer dive, benignly contributing to our understanding of the ocean and its inhabitants. The whales play where man seldom ventures. The research vessel Tulip is now positioned 65 miles out at sea, waiting, listening.
Tulip, we're noticing a number of directional changes. Can you give me your present status? Over.
Because they feed at prodigious depths, the sperm whales are found in the deeper offshore waters of Sri Lanka. The Tulip is under sail with no engine noises to spook the whales. Like the old lookouts in the crow's nest, Whitehead's crew members watch from high in the rigging. On deck, the researchers use underwater microphones to locate the whales by sound, even before they can be seen. This technique will enable the divers to intercept the whales as they approach the surface to breathe. There are no more whalers in the Indian Ocean. In 1979, the International Whaling Commission declared the entire Indian Ocean a whale sanctuary. No more whale blood will stain the surface of these waters. Now protected from grenades and harpoons, the whales of Sri Lanka weep not. The sperm whale is recognizable by its squared-off nose and the low hump on its back. The researchers have measured and identified individual whales, and they have acoustically tracked single animals and family groups for more than 3 days at a time. Newborn calves have been observed here, suggesting that these tropical waters are the long-sought nursery grounds of the sperm whales. The fears and apprehensions of the veteran divers are real. Since no one has ever dived with sperm whales before, the film crew does not know how these 40-foot, 40-ton animals will react to them. Will the divers pose a threat to the babies? Will the females protect their young? No one knows. In 1851, Herman Melville wrote, "The sperm whale, scientific or poetic, lives not complete in any literature. His is an unwritten life." How is it possible that the whale, the Yankee whalers hunted from the 18th century to the 1920s, is still such an enigma? Scientists like Dr. Whitehead are beginning to solve some of its mysteries. But the sea still keeps the whales hidden for most of their lives. How does the sperm whale feed? Those tales about battles with giant squid are mostly apocryphal. How deep can it dive? What is the function of that 1,000-gallon reservoir of oil in the Titanic nose? We recognize that this inscrutable hulk is the undisputed deep-diving champion of the mammalian world. It can hold its breath for an hour and a half and descend to depths of 2 miles, maybe even more. Why don't these animals get the bends at these enormous depths? How can they withstand the crushing pressure of millions of tons of water? The sperm whale has the largest brain of any animal that has ever lived, 6 times as large as that of man. The blue whale, a much larger and heavier animal, has a much smaller brain. The sperm whale, like their little cousins, the dolphins, use sound as their principal medium. They live in an ocean of noise. They hear each other, and they also hear the echoes of their prey. They may even use sound to stun the squid that make up the great majority of their diet. Although it is still unproven, there is a theory that sperm whales broadcast sounds of such intensity that the squid are immobilized or even killed outright, making it possible for the breath-holding whale to gobble up its food in great quantities instead of chasing down the squid one by one. For the first time, we are seeing the living sperm whale underwater. And it is nothing at all like the stiff, ungainly creature that we thought it was. It is a surprisingly sinuous animal, flexible and supple as a snake, and apparently as comfortable upside down as it is right side up. In the 3-mile deep waters off Trincomalee, the whales dive to the cold, black depths where no light penetrates, to feed on a squid assembled there. divers were free swimming with the largest predators on Earth, and they emerged from the water unharmed and exhilarated. The whales were curious because they stayed around and examined the divers, sending out their click trains and ratchet sounds as they gracefully rolled and swooped through the water. In the protected waters of the Indian Ocean Sanctuary, the whales breathe and dive in their unexpectedly graceful manner, making their click sounds to locate the divers, the boats, and each other. If sperm whales have a language, we do not know what it is. We can only listen to their mysterious sounds and wonder. The families of whales can now swim safely in their sanctuary. Even though we have approached and filmed them, we have only begun to solve the sperm whale's mysteries. Many more years of benign research must take place before we will be able to say that we know these great animals. It may indeed be centuries before we can be absolved of our massive sins against them. Listen to the words of Lauren Isley, the anthropologist poet. If man had sacrificed his hands for flutes, he would still be a philosopher, but there would have been taken from him the devastating power to wreak his thought upon the world. Instead, he would have wandered, like the whale, homeless, across currents and winds and oceans, intelligent, but forever the lonely and curious observer of unknown wreckage falling through the blue light of eternity. This role would now be a deserved penitence for man. Perhaps such a transformation would bring him once more into that mood of childish innocence in which he talked successfully to all things living, but had no power and no urge to harm. It is worth at least a wistful thought that someday the whale might talk to us and we to him. It would break perhaps the long loneliness that has made man a frequent terror and abomination even to himself.